Throughout history, countless armies have tried to conquer islands. Most succeeded, but there are 5 islands on this planet that have turned every invasion attempt into a nightmare. One of them defeated the largest amphibious assault in modern history. Another has cliffs so deadly that even landing on its shores is virtually impossible. And one island, well, it's defended by something far more terrifying than any military. But we'll get to that later. By the end of this video you'll understand why these 5 pieces of land have remained unconquered, and why they probably always will. Let's dive in. Our first island might surprise you. It's not heavily militarized. It doesn't have a massive army. In fact, it doesn't have an army at all. Welcome to Iceland. Iceland sits in the North Atlantic, roughly 800 kilometers from Scotland and about 970 kilometers from Norway. It's home to around 380,000 people and hares. The kicker: Iceland has no standing army, no navy, and no air force. On paper, it should be one of the easiest islands to invade in the world. But here's the thing: nobody's successfully invaded Iceland in over 1,100 years. First, let's talk about location. Iceland is isolated, really isolated. Any invasion force would need to cross hundreds of kilometers of some of the most hostile waters on Earth. The North Atlantic isn't just cold, it's violently unpredictable. Storms can appear out of nowhere with waves reaching over 20 meters high. During winter, forget it. The seas become so rough that even modern naval vessels struggle. But let's say you somehow make it across. Now you're dealing with the island itself. Iceland is essentially a volcanic fortress. The interior is a frozen wasteland of glaciers, lava fields, and active volcanoes. There are no forests to hide and no large areas of flat land for staging armies. The coastline, it's jagged with limited landing spots that any defender could easily monitor and fortify. And here's where it gets interesting. Iceland might not have its own military, but it's a NATO member. That means an attack on Iceland is an attack on the United States, the UK, France, and 28 other nations. Iceland essentially has the entire Western military alliance as its defense force. During World War I, both Britain and the United States recognized Iceland's strategic importance and stationed troops there, not to conquer it, but to prevent the Nazis from doing so. Because if you control Iceland, you control access between the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. So why is Iceland unconquerable? It's not just the geography or the weather, it's the strategic tripwire effect. Invading Iceland means triggering a response from the most powerful military alliance in history. And that's before you even deal with the volcanoes. Now, if you think Iceland's geography was rough, wait until you see what makes this next island a defender's dream. And speaking of timely, this island has been all over the news lately because of some very ambitious acquisition plans. But first, stick around, because island number 2 has something that makes invasion not just difficult, but literally frozen in its tracks. Greenland. You've probably heard about it recently, because certain political figures have expressed interest in acquiring it. But here's the thing: even if Denmark wanted to sell it, which they don't, and even if Greenland wanted to be acquired, which they definitely don't, taking and holding Greenland by force would be one of the most impossible military operations in human history. Let me show you why. Greenland is the world's largest island at over 2.1 million square kilometers. That's about 3 times the size of Texas. But here's the kicker: 80% of it is covered by an ice sheet. Not just snow, not just frozen ground, an actual ice sheet up to 3 kilometers thick in some places. That ice sheet contains about 10% of the world's fresh water. It's a frozen fortress that's been there for thousands of years, and it makes the interior of Greenland completely uninhabitable and impossible to traverse with military vehicles. Greenland has a population of only about 56,000 people. Nearly all of them live in small settlements along the coast. Because the interior is, well, a giant glacier, there are no roads connecting the towns. You travel by boat, plane, or helicopter. That's it. Now imagine trying to invade and occupy an island the size of Western Europe, where you can't even drive between cities. But let's say you decide to invade anyway. First, you're dealing with the Arctic. Winter temperatures regularly drop to -50 degrees Celsius, with wind chill during winter months. Some parts of Greenland experience polar night, complete darkness for weeks at a time. Your soldiers would be fighting frostbite and Hypothermia before they ever encountered enemy forces. Your equipment would freeze, fuel would gel, batteries would die, metal becomes brittle in extreme cold, and can literally shatter. This isn't theoretical. Military operations in extreme cold are nightmares. Ask Napoleon about invading Russia in winter. Ask Hitler about the same mistake. Greenland's coastline is over 44,000 kilometers long when you account for all the fjords and inlets. It's jagged, icy, and offers very few suitable landing sites. Most of the coast is sheer cliffs or surrounded by pack ice for much of the year. And those fjords, they're not just pretty scenery there. Natural defensive positions. Any invasion force trying to land would be funneled into narrow passages where a small defensive force could hold off a much larger attacking force. Here's where it gets truly impossible: logistics. Greenland has virtually no infrastructure outside its coastal settlements. No rail network, no highway system, limited ports. Any invasion force would need to bring everything with them. And I mean everything: food, fuel, ammunition, medical supplies, spare parts, and you'd need to maintain supply lines across thousands of kilometers of Arctic Ocean while dealing with icebergs, storms, and pack ice. The amount of logistical support required would be staggering. Now, let's talk about why you'd even try to invade Greenland strategically. Yes, it's important. It sits between North America and Europe. It has rare earth minerals. It's becoming more important as Arctic ice melts and new shipping routes open. But here's the reality. The cost of invading and occupying Greenland would be astronomical for almost zero tactical gain. There's nothing there to capture except ice and 56,000 people who really don't want you there. And in the modern era, Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, which means it's protected by NATO. There's even a US military base there, Thule Air Base, which is a critical part of North America's early warning system for ballistic missiles. Any invasion of Greenland would trigger Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, meaning you'd be at war with the entire Western Alliance over ice. But honestly, Greenland's greatest defense isn't its military alliances or its geography. It's the cold itself. The Arctic doesn't care about your military technology or your battle plans. It will kill you just as dead as any bullet, and it's always there, always waiting. That's why no one has successfully invaded Greenland in recorded history, and that's why, despite any recent political discussions, no one is going to successfully invade it in the future. Either the island itself won't allow it, alright, we're halfway through, and the next island has something the previous two don't. It's been successfully invaded before. In fact, it's been invaded multiple times throughout history. But here's the thing: that was centuries ago. And the last person who tried, well, let's just say it didn't end well for him. Stay with me, because what makes this island unconquerable today is a lesson in how warfare has completely changed. Great Britain, the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it, this island has been a dominant force in global politics for centuries. It built the largest empire in history, but it's also been conquered by Romans, Vikings, and Normans. So why is it on this list? Because the last successful invasion of Britain was in 1066, that's almost 1,000 years ago. And since then, everyone who's tried has failed spectacularly. The English Channel is only 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That's nothing compared to the distances We've talked about. You can literally see France from Britain on a clear day. So what's the problem? 2 words: naval power. For most of the last 500 years, Britain has had the most powerful navy in the world. The Spanish Armada tried to invade in 1588. The British Navy destroyed them. Napoleon tried in the early 1800s, couldn't get past the Royal Navy. Hitler tried in 1940 with Operation Sea Lion, never even launched, because the Germans couldn't achieve naval or air superiority. Here's why that matters. You can't invade an island without controlling the seas around it. It doesn't matter how big your army is if you can't get them across the water. And historically, Britain's navy made sure nobody could. Today, Britain's navy isn't what it once was, but the principle remains the same. Britain is a nuclear power with 2 aircraft carriers, a fleet of advanced destroyers and frigates, nuclear submarines, and one of the most sophisticated air forces in the world. Also a founding member of NATO. Any invasion of Britain would require an amphibious operation larger than D-Day, and D-Day took years of planning absolute air and naval superiority, and the combined might of the United States, Britain, and Canada, and that was just to invade. France. Britain also has another massive advantage: intelligence. MI6 Five Eyes Alliance. Britain is part of the most sophisticated intelligence network on the planet. They'd know an invasion was coming long before it happened, and modern warfare isn't like it was 1,000 years ago. You can't just show up with boats and surprise anyone, and even if you somehow landed on British shores, then what? Britain is densely populated with 67 million people. It has one of the most developed infrastructure systems in the world, which sounds like an advantage for an attacker. But it's actually the opposite. Every road, every bridge, every rail line can be defended or destroyed. And British people have a long history of really not liking being invaded, but here's the final nail in the coffin. Britain has nuclear weapons on submarines that are always at sea. Always. Britain maintains a policy of continuous at-sea deterrence, meaning at least one nuclear submarine is always on patrol, hidden somewhere in the world's oceans. You can't invade a nuclear power without risking annihilation. It's that simple. If you think Britain's defenses are impressive, wait until you hear about the island nation that's never been successfully invaded in its entire history. Not once. And before we get to our number one island, which has a defense system that sounds like something out of a horror movie, let me tell you why New Zealand is basically invasion-proof. New Zealand. Two main islands. Sitting at the bottom of the world, over 2,000 kilometers from Australia, it's one of the most isolated developed nations on Earth, and in its entire history, no foreign military has ever successfully invaded it. Let me explain why. First, the isolation. New Zealand is surrounded by the Southern Ocean, some of the most violent and unpredictable waters on the planet. The roaring 40s and furious 50s are latitude bands where winds circle the globe, uninterrupted by land, creating massive waves and brutal storms year-round. Any invasion fleet trying to reach New Zealand would need to cross over 2,000 kilometers of these hostile waters. That's not a quick trip. That's days of exposure to storms that can sink modern cargo ships. And New Zealand would see you coming the entire time. But let's say you somehow make it across. Now you're dealing with the islands themselves. New Zealand is mountainous. The Southern Alps run through the South Island with peaks over 3,700 meters high. The terrain is rugged, heavily forested in places, and offers very few flat areas for staging large military operations. It's a defender's paradise. The coastline is over 15,000 kilometers long, with limited suitable landing beaches. Most of the coast is rocky, cliffy, or protected by treacherous waters. The beaches that do exist, New Zealand knows exactly where they are, and has had decades to plan their defense. Here's what makes it even harder. New Zealand has a population of only about 5 million people, mostly concentrated in a few cities, like Auckland and Wellington. That sounds like a weakness, but it's actually the opposite. There's nothing to capture in the interior. No industrial centers to seize. No population centers to control. Just mountains, forests, and farmland. Any invasion force would land on the beaches and then march through the mountains to capture small towns. The logistics would be a nightmare. And let's talk about the weather. New Zealand sits in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. Earthquakes are common. The terrain is constantly shifting, and the weather is notoriously unpredictable. You can experience 4 seasons in a single day. Storms roll in from the Southern Ocean with little warning. In the modern era, New Zealand is protected by strong alliances there. Part of Five Eyes intelligence, sharing with the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. They have mutual defense agreements. An attack on New Zealand would trigger responses from some of the most powerful militaries on Earth. But here's the real kicker. Why would anyone invade? New Zealand has no oil, limited mineral resources, and a small population. It's not a strategic choke point. It doesn't control vital shipping lanes. The cost of invading would be astronomical for almost zero strategic gain. New Zealand's greatest defense is that it's simply not worth the effort. You'd spend billions, lose thousands of soldiers, cross some of the most dangerous oceans on Earth, fight through mountains and forests, and at the end of it all you'd control sheep farms and beautiful scenery and New Zealanders there. Not just going to roll over. This is a nation with a warrior culture. The Maori have a long history of fierce resistance. Modern New Zealand may seem peaceful, but that's because no one's been foolish enough to test them. The isolation that once made New Zealand slow to develop is now its greatest shield. In an age of global warfare, being at the bottom of the world, surrounded by the Southern Ocean, protected by mountains and distance, is the ultimate defense. And now for our number one, unconquerable island, Australia. Yes, Australia. And before you laugh and say, but Australia is a continent, not an island, technically it's both. It's the world's largest island and smallest continent, so it counts. But here's why Australia isn't just unconquerable, it's practically uninvadable in a way that's almost comical. Let's start with size. Australia is absolutely massive. It's 7.7 million square kilometers. That's about the same size as the continental United States. You're not conquering that with a beach landing. You'd need to occupy an area the size of an entire continent, and most of it is completely inhospitable. Which brings us to Australia's greatest defense, the outback. The interior of Australia is one of the harshest environments on Earth. It's a vast desert where summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius. There's almost no water. There's no infrastructure. There's nothing. Any invasion force trying to move through the outback would be committing suicide. You'd need to bring every drop of water, every bit of food, every gallon of fuel with you. And you'd be doing it in an environment that's actively trying to kill you. Oh, and speaking of things trying to kill you, let's talk about Australia's wildlife. This is a country where 21 of the world's 25 most venomous snakes live, where spiders can kill you, where jellyfish can kill you, where even the plants can cause excruciating pain. Australia's wildlife has killed more invaders than its military ever has. Japanese learned this in World War I. They never seriously attempted to invade Australia because they knew the logistics were impossible. Australia's coastline is over 25,000 kilometers long. That's more than twice the circumference of the Earth. You'd need to defend landing zones across that entire distance. And most of Australia's population lives on the coast, meaning the interior remains empty and unconquerable. But the real kicker is distance. Australia is isolated in a way that no other island on this list is. It's over 3,000 kilometers from the nearest major landmass. Any invasion fleet would need to cross thousands of kilometers of open ocean just to reach Australian shores. And then, what you've arrived at a continent-sized island with almost no infrastructure in the interior, a small population concentrated on the coasts, and a defense force that knows you're coming from thousands of kilometers away in the modern era. Australia is also protected by ANZUS, the security treaty with the United States and New Zealand. It's part of Five Eyes intelligence sharing. It has a modern, well-equipped military with advanced fighters, submarines, and surveillance capabilities, but honestly, Australia doesn't need any of that. The continent itself is the defense system. And let's say somehow you landed troops on Australian beaches. Now you need to occupy it. You'd be fighting an insurgency across an area the size of the United States in one of the most hostile environments on Earth, with supply lines stretching thousands of kilometers across open ocean. It's not just difficult, it's impossible. Napoleon once said, "I can train soldiers, but I cannot make a climate." He was talking about Russia, but the same principle applies to Australia. You can bring the best military in the world, but you can't conquer geography, climate, and distance. So there you have it. 5 islands that are essentially unconquerable. Iceland, with its NATO shield and volcanic wastelands. Greenland with its ice sheet fortress and Arctic conditions. Britain with its naval tradition and nuclear deterrent. New Zealand with its southern ocean, isolation and mountainous terrain. And Australia, the continental land that's defended by its own geography. The lesson here in warfare: geography isn't just an advantage, sometimes it's everything. If you found this fascinating, hit that subscribe button, because we've got more geopolitical deep dives coming, and drop a comment. Which island surprised you the most? I'll see you in the next one.